Hello again. So we're going to make a color wheel for the color project. And you start out with a circle. You can use a compass. And if you have a compass like that, you can kind of keep that same radius you made your circle with and kind of use that to make the marks for the six. We're going to divide it up into 6 pieces. And that'll give you an evenly divided up into 6 pieces kind of circle by connecting those places where, if you look at what I'm doing, I'm taking the compass, I'm going to go to the next, that mark that I made, go to that and make that the center mark, make another, make sure I've got it set right. You didn't move. The problem with some compasses are they move around a lot. So I probably messed that up a little bit. But anyway, keep going around until you get your thing. Now in this also we'll have some, I think in my demo I did 6 squares, and on your D2L page I have listed 7 squares for the scales, for the color, the different color scales, which I'll talk about more. But 7 is actually easier because you have a center one that you can kind of use. So you can see right there I'm kind of dividing it up by connecting those different places where it touched or where it listed. All right, so welcome again, and we're going to work on a color wheel and some transitions. A tint transition or shade to tint transition, a complementary transition, and a color wheel. So earlier, previous video, different situation, and we can use this as a reference. That's on your D2L page, but you can also find lots of those other places, and you can buy one at an art supply kind of store, craft store. But basically, we'll start out with just the color wheel. We're going to try to get the primary and secondary colors. Primary colors are yellow, blue, red. Secondary colors are green, orange, and violet. And you get green, so you get the secondary colors by mixing the adjacent primary colors. So blue and yellow make green, blue and red make violet or purple, red and yellow make orange. These ones over here, we have your tint and shade, so we start out in the middle with red, although that doesn't really look like red. My printer is probably off. And mix a little bit of white so we get sort of a lightest possible red, and then mix in a little bit black so we get a dark red. And then we also have a complementary one where we start with colors that are complementary. Complementary colors are colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. So yellow and violet, red and green, orange and blue. And then we have some paints. For the tint and shade, you'll need the black and white and black. Titanium white and Mars black are the typical ones. And then these say primary red, primary yellow, and primary blue. And also a little container with some water, a brush. This was a 1/4-inch brush. It's kind of all flared out now from being abused. And you can rinse it off in the water or try to wipe the paint off. Well, follow all kind of local guidelines for disposing of dirty paint water. At school, we would pour it into some jugs that get picked up. Also, it'll work better, especially with a thinner paper like we're working. If this is really wet, it's just going to wrinkle the paper. So you kind of want to work with the paints as dry as possible. So you don't want to really thin them out with the water. It'll become too wet and the paper will get all wrinkly. But we can use this to clean the brushes. And then a palette. I know it looks like the top of a plastic Asiago cheese container, but it has a nice white thing here. You can also use a plate or a piece of glass. It's nice that the white there, because it kind of matches the white of the paper, so you can see the colors that you're getting. And a rag of some sort. In this case, an old t-shirt. Will work for it. You can mix up your paints on a piece of paper and make swatches and then cut out the shapes and then glue them on the paper. That'll give you a lot of leeway with kind of how messy it is or how not messy it is. Or if you make a mistake. You can kind of let things dry and go back over the top of them. I'm going to do it directly because that's what most people, even though I tell them the cleanest way to do it, I'm going to take, and when you squeeze the paint out of the tubes, you just want to put a little bit, okay? Don't dump out your whole thing because you're going to waste it, okay? So just put out a little bit as you need it. And we're going to leave the brush dry. And start out with the blue, yellow, and red for the primary colors. Like a little drop, don't get carried away. All right. So you can just sort of All right, so you can see got the blue, yellow, red going, and you might notice my pencil marks still showing there, so we should erase those beforehand. A little bit of shaky hand, a little mess over here. You also notice this one, the red, I left this part of the red, just one coat to show you the difference. So doing a second coat, I don't know if you can pick it up in the video as much, you'll see less of the paper, and you'll get more of a solid color. We'll start with the worst, orange, so the yellow and red. And sometimes it, you could think, oh, it should be an even mixture of the two. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes you can use a butter knife, but if you happen to have a palette knife, we make plastic ones, this happens to be a metal one, can help to mix the paints. But a lot of times we just end up using our brush, because there it is. But it does overload the brush a lot. But anyway, and again, I'm wiping off stuff in between, cleaning the brush a little bit and wiping it. Try not to create too much wastewater, and cleaning stuff off. Create this wonderfully colorful rag. So, what did I say? Orange. Let's go for orange. Put a little bit of yellow there. Start out with a little bit. The problem with putting a lot on is you end up with a lot of paint and you only use that much of it. So, again, you don't want to waste your paints. There's probably more. So actually what I'll do is I'll take some of this, kind of start to get an idea what my orange could look like. It's not too bad. I want to mix up so it's not streaky. If I get a lot of red in there, I get some very red orange, and I need to put some more yellow back in. And then sometimes I brush it on the paper and I decide maybe that wasn't the way I wanted it to be. I get a color that I kind of... Also, what's happening with my brush, by the way, is the hairs keep coming out, so that's kind of a pain if you get a cheap brush. I'm going to try to make some more here. I might add some more yellow in. Yellow in eventually, because this is going to be too red. You can see how this is really red. So I could add, here's where it gets dangerous, where like, oh, I'll put some more yellow on, and then and before you know it, you have too much. But try not to contaminate your paints. All right. So that's essentially the process. You'd be mixing, and this is going to be the process for mixing all of the paints too. You mix them around until you get the right color. You can use the color wheel or the chart to compare and kind of go along and work at it. All right. So I'm moving right along, kind of roughly. And one of the things that I thought of, and I should mention, is when you have a color that has a lighter value. There's different ways you can think about that, intensity and such, or saturation and stuff like that. But basically, just to be, the one that's lighter usually gets overwhelmed by the darker one. So when you're mixing red and yellow, you're probably going to need more yellow because the red is going to be overwhelm the thing. Same thing with blue and yellow making green. And the other thing is to remember, you should always read whatever paint, the safety things, whatever your paints come with. Even if they say you can eat them and they're non-toxic, even if they say they're non-toxic, don't eat them. And make sure not to have any food, eat around or drink around your paints, because you don't want to ingest the stuff, okay? All right, so our transitions. I'll start out with the complementary one because that's a little bit trickier. And this time I'll use the palette. All right, so I've got a square of the orange and blue are my complementary colors. And then, so now I'm going to put, and remember, slide this back, that the blue is much darker and I'm going to overwhelm. So I'm just going to put a little bit of blue over there in the corner here. And I might clean off some of this so not so much. Remember, try to keep it in a puddle. Put some red on there. Okay. Take a little bit of blue. Oh, that's probably too much. And then mix that in. All right, so here we have the color wheel that I've quickly done. The complementary, in this case we chose the orange and the blue. So orange and blue are across from each other, they're complementary colors. And then I did a Tint and Shade. Now, these have 6 because I don't know, rushing it. But you probably could go more squares, get more graduation. I could probably have gone lighter, farther, could have moved this down and made these lighter, got darker really quickly over here, which can happen. I could let these dry and I could go back over it if I wanted to experiment with that more and make these a little lighter. But all in all, so you can see some different ways you can take a color and transform it by mixing it with another color. So you can see how you can add, the white to the blue to make it lighter, or black to it to make it much, much darker. And then orange and the complementary colors give you sort of a different type of range of kind of things. And all of these, I would say, I should probably go over again with another coat because you can see the brush marks and stuff. Although, I like the variation of the brush marks visually myself. Anyhow, maybe I'm just sloppy. So, on later projects, you can use, after you practice some of these with the other ones, you can kind of utilize some of these. Have fun.